But you quit the idea of going the extra mile and doing more. You're like, I work from 9 to 5. You arrive at 10 to 9. You're not going into the office. You will sit in the car, listen to that last minute of the podcast, and 9 o'clock you will tag in and go. You'll take your lunch break, 12 on the dot to 1 o'clock. I realize now that the reason I was friends with Penny is because after work we'd go for drinks. Suddenly Penny and I aren't talking. I realized that my sister and I were only talking because month end we'd meet, go Stockfell. So you start, exactly. So do so much, yet I don't think I'm getting paid enough. I watch Penny leave at 5 or at 3 to pick up her kids or whatever the reality is for Penny. I sit here till midnight, yet we're being paid the same, or Penny's even getting paid more. And when you quit, a part of it kind of diminishes at your creativity. And that's why you find people just saying, I will just do what I need to do. I'm not going the extra mile.
Phindi, welcome to Hot Seat with Penzola. Thank you so much for coming through. I have been trying to get you on this hot seat for a long time now, and I think it's perfect as we celebrate Women's Month. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I've been trying and I'm finally here. It's hot. I'm excited. I'm ready. Thank you so much again for inviting me.
Awesome stuff. So before we get into the topic of the day, which is wellness, right? So let's just, let's give my viewers a piece or a taste of who Phindi is, and what are you about, and then we can get into it.
Sure. So as you already said, Phindile Phiri. I'm a KZN rural girl that has been in Joburg for a while now. So I think my business or my interest in wellness really has been an internal job for myself in dealing with everything that a woman, a mother, a sister, a daughter has to deal with. So I started Wellness with Phindi as a reflection for myself in terms of what it is that I needed to take care of my body, because wellness is holistic, and that's what we look at, how you take care of your body, but that manifests into your mind as well, because the two are interlinked. So Wellness with Phindi is really around a holistic view of oneself, internal locus, so that you're actually able to function in a very highly charged world, because you have to take pause, step back, go back in, step, pause back, because it's just so much going on. And so with Wellness with Phindi stems from, I studied psychology in my undergrad, then went to work in a marketing world. Then it's always been a nagging feeling, and went back, did my honors, and decided to then open Wellness with Phindi, which is a counseling and wellness space. And I think, especially during COVID, I've never seen quite a boom, because I think everyone had a time to sit back and reflect and really see what matters. So that's what essentially I am about, and what Wellness with Phindi is about.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you obviously speak about, the wellness of the body, the wellness of the mind, the wellness of the emotions. And these three different areas, if one of them are not taken care of, obviously it does then manifest itself through the body. So and I want to go into more of the corporate space. How, based on what you've said and based on what you do, how do you see the awareness of wellness influencing the corporate space? Because that's really where most of our people spend their time.
For sure. The white collar work, I think, is probably the biggest industry. And I think until recently, the focus was always on, in the wellness space, they set up health checks once a year, etc. But I've really seen in the recent years a move into the mental space as well. And I think very much accelerated with COVID, where individuals needed to still be engaged and be creative and have outputs in the workspace, but working at home as well.
Correct,
so I think that was a big drive and accelerator of mental health within the corporate, or even just the workspace, Penny, because it's not just about the corporate. I see all industries actually starting very slowly, some lagging behind, but it is actually a topic. So what we're seeing is that mental health issues or matters have actually been normalized, I think accelerated in the last 2 years, where you're seeing people openly talking about not being okay. And I think it's a space where you have the mental capacity and you share the space and you say, right now, I can only take on so much. So I do see a change and a shift in the working space where people are bringing their whole selves into the space, because if you bring your whole self, you are more engaged, you're more productive.
Right?
Yeah, you're more productive, and you're bringing your passion. It doesn't mean you're happy all the time.
Correct.
It just means that you are more aware, and the people around you, your teams, are more aware of where to meet you based on what you're going through. So we are seeing a rise in the conversations around mental health being normalized, even in the workplace, which is really something that you would take 5 years ago was not a norm.
Absolutely. I mean, many years ago, there was always a saying, you can't bring your problems at work. And somehow the expectation was that you need to be a different person at work. And I'm glad we are starting to see a shift. However, I do think that that comes with a particular culture within an organization, right? So, and there's always this buzzword now within the corporate space of psychological safety. Now, in order for you to bring who you are, how do you think, in your opinion, organizations need to create the psychological safety so that Penny can bring herself in the environment and be comfortable in saying, I'm going through a divorce? And also being allowed to be checked into an institution if you need to, for you to go through a particular program. Where are you seeing that go?
I think the main thing, or the big gaps, is actually corporates introducing programs or having conversations with the employees, staff, or associates versus because you see a lot of policies. If you go to all corporates, all corporates will have a policy around mental health, will have the policy around safe spaces, give feedback, but the reality is they trust in what happens with the feedback that I give. So I think the big thing is around creating those safe pockets, and I think critical to that is actually having the conversations with the associates before you write in any kind of programs and policies. And the big advocates of that is the managers. Senior management is so critical because that's where the masses are. So if you take a call center of a huge organization where you've got the team leaders that lead into managers, that lead into senior managers, then the execs. So writing a policy at the top, or having conversations of what you think someone who picks up the phone on behalf of your organization is going through, it doesn't make sense, right? Because you need to understand that they have to wake up at 5 in the morning to make it to your organization at 8. They have to take care, take the children and everything. So there's a lot of considerations that they have, but you may say, you have an 8 to 5, you have flexible this, but the reality of, do you understand what flexibility looks like for someone on the edges? Because the snow melts at the edges, but no one actually realizes, and you write all of these things. So I think creating those safe spaces starts with the people that have direct contact. So hence I highlighted the middle management, because I think they are have the masses when it comes to the people and what the real issues are within that space. And I think from a safe environment aspect as well, it's what does the corporate stand for as well? Because sometimes there's a misalignment in terms of even the values of a certain organization and your own values, that then during that conflict where you're supposed to bring your true self, there's a conflict in an alignment in terms of what they stand for, high performance corporate. A lot of the shift where you just find in and you'd really want to be creative and engage and build, but you find that the kind of environment and what that corporate stands for doesn't align with you. And this is where you then see the issues of people leaving themselves, coming in and saying, well, I don't talk about home when I come to work. I don't engage on the problems that I have. But if your mind is occupied 70% about the issues that you left at the door,
so you therefore are not going to be able to be
you are
productive.
definitely not productive.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you're bringing up the point around, people end up leaving because of the environment, which doesn't allow them to feel safe about the things that they're going through. In order to, even though the policies on paper look great around promoting wellness, but the actual individuals within the organization are the ones that need to ensure that the environment is transformed. Now, I want to move on to this new concept, which is now developing, and I think personally I started noticing it after COVID. I mean, COVID really was great, but was also not great. It was great because it showed us that we can be flexible in working in different spaces, but also just the human touch, the element of being with your team, engaging with other colleagues is also important. But this emerging concept of quiet quitting, for me, is quite interesting because, others leave, but those that don't have, that can't leave, there's some sort of quitting that they do, which is silent. And that manifests itself where someone comes in and does what they need to do. They don't go the extra mile. And there's no passion. They're completely disengaged. So, I mean, what are your thoughts around that? How does the corporate space and you as a wellness person, how do we shift that?
It's a very interesting phenomenon. I think it has definitely accelerated in the last 2 years. And like you highly said, from COVID, where individuals had to reset. You went back from working at home. Some of the guys are now asked to come back into the office, where they've actually normalized working from home and made that their reality. And then you're now being asked to come back to work. But the way you've shifted your life, you now are okay here. So being asked to move into a space then doesn't align with where you are right now. So what we see with quiet quitting, it's actually what they say is that you don't quit. It's not essentially quit because you don't leave the job, right?
Don't leave the job.
But you quit the idea of going the extra mile and doing more.
Yes.
You're like, I work from 9 to 5. You arrive at 10 to 9. You're not going into the office. You will sit in the car, listen to that last minute of the podcast, and 9 o'clock you will tag in and go.
Yeah.
You'll take your lunch break, 12 on the dot
hour.
to 1 o'clock.
Yes.
So it's really on creating the boundaries and living within the reals of the contract. It's literally saying, it's not quitting, I'm not doing my job, but I'm not going to the extra mile. Yeah. And the reason for that, and sometimes it's not even the minimum. Sometimes I'm just giving you what you're paying me for.
Correct.
It becomes transactional. It's a relationship where you like, I do X, you give me Y, and this is Z, which is our relationship. So I think the reason for quiet quitting a lot is when people aren't feeling heard. Remuneration is a big part of it. Reward, feeling valued. So a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And it happens based on where you are in your life. So like you said, you may be having found your passion and where you should be, but your finances don't allow you to leave the space.
Correct.
Therefore, you will stay, you'll do just enough and you'll move. Now, the danger in corporates is that you live within a 9 to 5 space. And I think that's why we see quiet quitting more prevalent in that space than you would in entrepreneurial or any other spaces. Because in the corporate, you are defined within how you conduct yourself. And by that, then it means that if you have a set of rules or roles, or a defined scope of what you need to do at a certain time, then you are able to say, well, the contract says,
Correct.
or this is what I am giving you based on what we have agreed on.
It's black and white, yeah.
But then on the flip side, it's that it is a big, you're not motivated to be in that space. So I don't know if you are actually giving all of yourself in that space. I don't know if you are driven. I don't know if you are passionate about what you have to deliver. Because going into a workplace, it doesn't matter if it's a corporate or what it is, it's the creativity of solving a problem. And when you quiet quit, a part of it kind of diminishes at your creativity. And that's why you find people just saying, I will just do what I need to do. I'm not going the extra mile. And I think corporates, if I can just go into then on the flip side of it, is that if the managers, and I think to my prior point, or management or the team leaders aren't close enough to the associates or employees, then they are not able to actually build a safe space, or have the trust to have the conversation to say, I'm feeling slightly disengaged. I don't think the work is stimulating me, or I do so much, yet I don't think I'm getting paid enough. I watch Penny leave at 5 or at 3 to pick up her kids, or whatever the reality is for Penny. I sit here till midnight, yet we're being paid the same, or Penny's even getting paid more. So sometimes it's a lot of that internalization and reflection of where are you in the space. Do you see growth? Do you see yourself contributing in a way that is for the greater success? And what does that then success mean for you personally, whether that's in your pocket, whether that's in where you're trying to be from an achievement, or even seeing yourself being able to develop and grow in a particular organization. So I think it is quite a lot of different things.
Yeah. So I mean, I definitely, resonate with some of the stuff that you've said. And I think with the changing environment within the corporate space and the changing environment, in our own personal space as human beings, I then have to wonder to say, things like the economy that we see ourselves in that's not growing. There's, people are financially stretched, but also organizations are trying to cut costs, right? So where natural attrition takes place and people are not being replaced, and therefore work needs to be split, amongst those that are there, which obviously could add in the workload. So what do you think as leaders of today? Because I'm certainly thinking the way in which leadership was perceived in the last 5-6 years is very different to how we need to lead our people today. So what would you say the leadership of today needs to really focus on to start creating the trust, and not be managers in fact, because there's a difference, right?
For sure.
So what are your thoughts on that? How do we as leaders out there evolve and adapt to what's happening today?
I love what you said with managers and leadership, because I think it's a very, it's not the same. It's very different. Yeah. And I think until recently, by being a manager, you were automated into a leader because you led people.
Correct.
Right? It was just like you manage a particular piece of work. By managing them, it means then you lead. You are considered leadership.
Correct.
When it's not actually the case. Because leadership requires you to lean in and to lead. Right? And that may not even be in a manager level, but leading thinking and ways of being and a culture, even as an individual. So I think that leaders of today, and it's funny you referenced the restructures and having a couple of jobs. When I was reading up on quiet quitting, I also saw that someone saying, I now have 8 bosses in a particular corporate or role, because I also have the innovation manager,
yes.
I have my direct manager, I have the project lead who's leading that particular project. So you end up being stretched quite a lot, and you have to be delivering across 8 different, you're going to have 8 different measures of success, and you're one person. So this is where then quiet quitting comes in, because you're like, well, in my function, I'm actually only supposed to be doing 1, 2, 3 according to my job scope. So, when we have these restructures or reorganizations, you find that you then are suddenly doing a project that has multiple reports into. So you have your direct manager, the innovation leader, the business leader, the project leader. And what happens then is that your responsibilities become quite a lot, and your performance in a particular program has different people that have to feed into it. So then that can also lead you to be a bit demotivated, because you are suddenly having more responsibilities than what was in your contract, but also what you feel you are being paid or rewarded for. So then people start to draw back. People start saying, well, I'll only do so much and I'll only give so much of me in that space. As a leader in that space where you have to motivate across, sometimes you have to motivate in dotted lines where you don't actually have the person as your direct report, but the person has you have an influence in the work that the person is doing. So I think leaders need to be authentic. I think before, as we highlighted, that there used to be management who automatically become leaders, but leaders need to be the ones driving the transformation.
Correct.
They need to be ahead of the curve in terms of what is needed for that particular organization and what is needed from them, the self, leading yourself, leading with purpose, so that you can then motivate others to meet you and be open. Because if you're a leader that's closed off in a space like that, no one is encouraged to come up. If you're a leader that has created a culture of hierarchy, no one is able to infiltrate that, because then we don't speak up against Penny. We don't say anything that Penny is against. We don't bring ideas. And organizations need to be careful, because if you have leaders like that, then you have people withdrawing. You're not having new ideas coming in. You can't innovate in a space like that. And you don't understand that sometimes the poison is actually in the leadership. Because if the leader is not leading with purpose, telling people why we're doing this, inviting people into sharing in succeeding in what we're trying to do, then you don't have that diverse environment where Penny can come with this view, Penny can look this way, Phindi can sound this way. Then you have a mix. And in spaces like that, people can feel that they're comfortable in speaking up. That's how you create a safe space. That's how you then have people that say, I can say, hey, Penny, you're looking like you are a little bit demotivated. Is everything okay? Boss, you know what, this project isn't really stimulating. I did it 2 years ago. Or you guys have given me this. On top of that, my son right now is going through X. So then you are able to actually see the capacity that the person has to show up for a particular environment.
So I totally agree with you. I think there's some good points that you've mentioned. But as you were talking, I started thinking about, you know, as we evolve in the corporate environment and these cross-functional teams that we've created, whilst your role is this particular role and it's got these objectives, the role of leadership actually not only belongs to those that lead, right? So even as an individual, you've got to lead sideways, because now you have to learn how to influence, right? In order for you, so you're in this cross-functional team. Now this person that doesn't report to you must deliver to you, and the inability to influence is what's going to cause the performance the objective not to be achieved. And in my experience, I'm finding that people are not able to articulate that. You know, we find ourselves not delivering, not because we don't want to, but because there's an element that has been added to our current roles of being able to draw delivery from sideways. And I think that is the biggest thing for me, because you can be hired as a project manager, which, you know, could be you follow particular steps, but if you don't have the ability to articulate and land the point and influence, you know, then it becomes difficult. And I think that might also contribute to somebody kind of moving back and saying, I actually can't do this job. And then there's quiet quitting. And I think that's essentially what I've been noticing. But I think I want us to move back. I want us to go back into the personal space now with this wellness idea, right? So whilst quiet quitting happens in the corporate space, and we don't quit because we got to pay bills, right? So I'm wondering if there is actually the concept of quiet quitting at home, in the home environment.
There's quiet quitting in everything. As long as you are involved and you are supposed to contribute to a space, there's room for quiet quitting. You can quiet quit as a parent, because as long as you provide the financial means, you've got Auntie to take care of the kids. You come in and you say, well, I've done the parts. He's alive, he's going to school, he's got his football. But in terms of the emotional capacity, and that can happen because you have a whole lot of other things that need from you and you're quite depleted. So hence, when we talk about wellness holistically, it's looking at all of those parts. Sometimes I physically am just tired and I can't play with you outside.
Correct.
Right? And you just arrive every day physically tired from work and you're not going to play with your kid. So you are there as a mother, but in terms of contribution into that relationship or space is actually what then can be seen as quiet quitting. You're like, oh ma, but you take your child to a eating place or a place of play, but you're not actually physically contributing to the environment or space that you're in. And you raised a very good one. I think in marriages it's probably the most where you see the concept of quiet quitting, because you are there, you're in the space, you're doing everything. However, you just are not engaged in that space. You do enough to be deemed a wife because you wash and you cook.
Correct.
You do enough to be a boyfriend because you picked her up and you took her to a date. But your investments, and I mean in my household, we have a concept with my son around capacity or capability. So he'll come, mama, and I'm like, right now I don't have the capacity, because if I answer or engage right now, you're not going to get the whole of me. I'm literally just going to tick a box and to let you leave because you're asking. But let me sort this out and have the full capacity to what you need me for. And that's when I'm engaged. So we have a culture of understanding where the person is in order for that person to give or contribute. So it's very much within the family space. Think of friends. Think of your family. A lot of people don't even talk to their families. So they've actually quite quit. It's like, okay, Nzoya, it's a funeral. It's that, I'll go. It's family. But you're not physically contributing to anything that is building. You're not providing creativity into what can help us be a better family, etc. So you see a lot of quiet quitting, even in yourself. People just like, hey, I'm okay, I'm here, it's enough. You don't do anything more in trying to better yourself. So part of my wellness journey is around like, it's not even about exercising. I just take time to note the moment I'm in. So I'll wake up, drop my son, we bless the day, and then I'll either go to gym. I'm not going to gym to be on like crazy treadmills. It's a time for me to recollect and pour back into me so that I'm able to then go into the different spaces whole and full. If you start at a 10, it's easier to get to a 5 at the end of the day. But if you start at a 0, it's harder to get to a 5, let alone a 10. So when you talk of that space and quiet quitting in different avenues of your life, definitely.
It definitely happens there, yeah. So there's an interesting concept, and I think you're spot on, because I think initially when this concept was emerging, I honestly thought it was just in the workspace, and I thought it can't happen at home. But I mean, the way that you put it, it makes sense. But and in response to that, I was reading a book the other day, and there was a piece around mindfulness. It sounds like such an awesome word, right? And as I was reading about it, how practical is it? Like I've tried a few times, you know, but how does one truly practice mindfulness?
Yeah. And I love that you say try because it is a daily thing. I read something on one of the socials this week that spoke about I'm not going to ask you to have a good day. I'm just going to have you to have a day. Just have a day. Just arrive. You are now here. You're now here, Penny. You're alive today. You don't have a choice unless you physically make yourself not have a choice. But you're here. So how do you then start to train and condition your mind? So a big part around reframing how you see things. Change comes, bad things come. There's going to be something. I'm going to drive out here. The only control I have is me in that car.
Right.
So if you can always understand that the only control you have is in you, it doesn't mean I don't go through bad things. Doesn't mean bad things won't happen.
Correct.
But it just means that when you start to understand your contribution to a particular incident, yes, my manager's bad. Yes, my manager's this. Yes, this and this. Yes, my husband is bad. Yes, my wife. But what is my contribution to it? There's always something that you have in control, because it's about the concept of the mind. And that's why I got into psychology. I just always would like, why are we presented with the same thing, yet our actions to it are different, right? Absolutely. So I'm always trying to understand what drives you, and that's based on how you've been socialized to a lot of things. So if you're in a household where you are always, it's alarm, and that's the reaction that you learn to things, you have to uncondition yourself from that and learn to be in the space and be fully aware of what's in front of you so that you can carry on. And it's a daily task, Penny. You're not asking someone to be mindful and then they suddenly are the guru and that. It's not, and I suppose that's where people give up on diets, because everyone makes it the mecca, right? It makes it like it's this thing that you get and you run. It's a daily thing.
So, but Phindi, just explain that concept. What is the concept of mindfulness? Mindfulness
is just being in a space of awareness of yourself first, and then what yourself is in a space and how you then react and engage in a certain space. So being aware. So right now I'm aware that you and I are sitting here. The conversation we're having is going to have an impact and hopefully spark conversations. I'm aware in this very space. I'm not thinking of my assignments. I'm not thinking of everything else that's there, because that's there. It's part of life. Part of life is having a list of things to do, right? But right now, as I sit here with you, I am tapping into myself. I'm tapping into me. I'm tapping into the conversation we're having. So it's about just being self-aware of the spaces you're in. Even in the workplace, there's always all of that. And I think as leaders, if I just take it back to the workplace, if you are a leader that is aware, self-aware of you and the environment you're in. I can't come in and say, hey, you didn't meet the targets when you guys have just lost an employee and where someone's just come in with something. So if I'm not self-aware, if I'm not mindful of the impact of what I say and how I impart things. Tonality is a big part of mindfulness because I can say the same thing and something bad, by the way, deliver the news, but how I deliver it doesn't harm. It's from a factual point of view. Penny, this month you didn't meet your target, therefore these are some of the things when one doesn't meet the target, versus saying, Penny, you're not doing your job. Because you wake up and you come in.
Correct.
But you're not reaching it.
However,
the
output is not
maybe
aligned.
for sure, maybe this time let's try it this way. Penny, I see this month you lacked in this thing. How about we focus on that particular thing? So mindfulness is in essence the self-awareness of where and what you are doing at that very moment so that you're able to impart and impact the space that you're in.
Right. So before we carry on, I want us to go back to wellness with Phindi, right? Talk to me about what are the services with wellness with Phindi. So if somebody's watching and they are resonating with what you're saying right now and they either need to bounce off or soundboard or maybe have a counseling session.
For sure.
So what are your services? Where do we find you?
So Wellness with Phindi is I call it a holistic wellness space, right? Where we provide services such as counseling, therapy. And sometimes people think you have to have a problem before you can reach out to us. Sometimes, to your point, it's just bouncing off. I've been thinking about this a lot. I don't know if it's deeper than what it is, or it actually is an issue, or it's just a thought, because I'm human and we have thoughts. And what we then help is that we help you navigate what that space is in terms of what it is that it's presenting or manifesting itself in you. So we have counseling, which is we do online, have a lot of clients. And I think during COVID was probably one of my most successful and probably most motivating times, because a whole lot of people reached out in terms of just, I'm alone and I'm quarantined in a different country from my family. I realize now that the reason I was friends with Penny is because after work we'd go for drinks. Suddenly Penny and I aren't talking. I realized that my sister and I were only talking because month end we'd meet, go Stockfell. So you start exactly. So I saw a lot of those kind of mental that people were having during COVID. Therefore, a lot of the things we saw and a lot of things that Wellness with Phindi did was around just navigating what it is. Because sometimes you just need someone to bounce it off, say it to you loud, and then it's like makes sense. Because a lot of the time it's not, I don't have a magic wand. I don't have a magic wand to make the problem disappear or the issue, but I help you understand or even unpack a bit more. Sometimes there's actually very deeper issues where I actually have to refer you to probably like institution, psychiatry, because you realize that some of the issues are actually because you've been on the go and you haven't stopped. You actually realize that there's a lot more that you have not dealt with. So Wellness with Phindi provides those services in just helping you to just pause. I always say just pause. Because when you pause, then you have a moment to hear things. Things are there. The signals are all there, but sometimes it's too loud, you're busy, and you don't get a chance to do. So we are online. You can find us on Instagram, Wellness with Phindi, and we also have our details there in terms of how to reach out to us for that. We do live sessions as well. But a lot of that, I realized that with COVID, a lot of people are actually able to meet where they are in that time. So someone's traveling for business, they don't miss a session because it's online and we have the conversations. We allow for you to also do some experiences in terms of journaling. I never believe, I don't like writing, I don't like reading, but I realize that sometimes as you write something, it becomes...
I've got a journal that I bought. So in one of the development programs that I did, we were specifically at the end of the program, we were given a journal, and the instruction was that you must write every night. You must write what you're grateful for, as part of gratitude process. And I think I wrote 2 pages, but I struggle. I struggle to write, and I think maybe that's something I need to look at, because. You're almost talking to yourself as you're writing. And
because you know why that is? Because it's quite hard to actually read what you've written. My journal, I don't have a new journal. My journal from 2007.
Sure.
Yeah. actually 2006 when I lost my mom. It's the same journal. I sometimes open it and I haven't written since 2020 or whatever year. And I go back, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I realize the growth, I realize what I've gone through, I realize the pain, I realize the trauma. I also realize, oh my gosh, I can't believe that was an issue in 2006 that is now. And I swear, it's not full at all, but it's sometimes one-liners of a certain period in time that I can just remember exactly what was going on at that time and be able to recollect from. So I think the concept and why it makes it hard, going back to mindfulness, is because when you put a set time, you know, programs have times and once a day. I have a gratitude jar. You can come into my house, you write it. I think if you go into my page, you'll actually see one of my episodes is around actually opening those jars. So anyone that comes to my house can come in and just write and put it in there, right? So it's just a moment in time. It doesn't have to be given a time frame, because I realize that that's what also makes it harder for people to stay onto programs. So if I'm with if I'm seeing someone and I have to give them some of the work, my encouragement is when you wake up, doesn't have to be on the it's just at some point, sometimes when you just hit the pillow, and it's not your husband next to you, it's not your son, it's literally just you and your thoughts. I find that a lot of reflection happens in that time, and that's sometimes a good time to know for you when to actually just pen down and be in yourself. And it's very hard to be in yourself, Penny. It's very hard. People,
I'm certainly on that journey. But
it's very, very hard.
I think I'm in no hurry. I'll take my time. You mentioned something interesting earlier on around not needing to have a problem. If you need to speak to someone, because the common thing is that you must have a problem to go to a counselor or to go to therapy. I actually did a round table with a group of gents on the show, and one of the questions I had for them was, how do they deal mental illness? Do they share with their spouses? Do they share with their friends?
No.
And the answer was no.
No.
And it's quite interesting, and that's what I wanted to ask you in terms of your clientele. Do you find that have you got male clients?
It's actually very interesting. I am finding, though it's the younger males. I think I've had one older client, in my entire, and it was very interesting because I was like, oh my gosh, I wish your wife could actually hear this, because it was things that I think have manifested so much in where he was, but the person that could probably help him the most has never heard these things. Things, everything is okay. Things, the finances are the way they are. Things that he's got this. And also, just sorry to derail, as an African people, we just get told to get on with it. We're strong. We're supposed to be resilient. And that has killed us.
If you're strong,
that has killed us, because then you don't create boundaries against families. You don't have, I just need me to be okay before I can get to you, right? So even men, they are supposed to be always strong and switched on and ready, and they can't feel down. They can't feel overlooked for a promotion. They can't feel disrespected by their families. They can't feel the burden of just life. Right. You're allowed to. You're allowed to be like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm a mom. I'm a sister. I had to bake. The stock fell. A man can't say, I'm a brother. I'm this. Because it's like, right? And another thing that I was in one of the shows and we spoke about that women aren't ready as well. Think of when Will Smith had the outbreak.
I know.
We all laughed.
Yes.
Didn't we all laugh? And everyone was. Because we have never been trained to see a man that is soft in emotion, in touch, mindful. It's always got to be the macho. So when we see that, we don't know how to react to it. So I think a lot of the reason why men don't actually expose of their feelings is because even the environment doesn't allow for it. If your husband, your boyfriend, your son comes in and it's like, oh, today I'm feeling a bit down. You're like, oh, come on.
Just get on with it.
Right? We say get on with it. So we don't create the safe spaces to have these conversations.
So in as much as we want, and we
the idea of it.
We find fault in men not expressing their emotions, but we are also the ones that are not creating the
big
safe
time.
space for
We
them,
definitely don't.
Because and I mean, I'm also going to derail a bit, because there was whilst we see a lot of assault cases against women, there are assault cases against men. And I was chatting to a friend the other day to say, gender-based violence is not just about women, right?
For sure.
Men get assaulted too, but
The reporting.
But the reporting, can you imagine that guy going to a police station and saying, my wife is beating me?
Don't even go to the police station.
Right?
That's unofficial.
Correct.
To his friends.
To his
Don't
friends.
even go to a police station because that's like an institute.
Right.
Talk about like just your best friend. If you had to fully nudge, and I always laugh because sometimes, not even like, just I'm amazed. I sit and I'm like, especially in the workplace, because people can just speak. You're going to walk away. But some of the things, I'm like, I really hope your wife knows this. I really hope your brother knows this. I really hope your mom knows this. Because men tend to suffer in silence and accept the abuse in silence. So sometimes you always have to have the money for your family. That you don't. And they don't know this. But you got to be, you park your car, walk or take a taxi. They don't know what you're actually doing in the background, but you always got to be on as a man because of the societal, I suppose, pressures that come that we've created, right? For sure.
So Phindi, if there's a guy out here that's watching and listening to you, what would you say to him? If he's going through what you're saying, there's no ability for him to share and be emotional with his wife, with his mom, with whoever. Yeah.
You know what the good thing that has come with digitization, or I suppose technology, is that there's actually a lot of material online. There's a lot of things, at least just to start the conversation. Because I always say, I say to my son all the time, Google's your friend. Because yes, it's got a lot of crazy things, but it's also got good. If used right, there's a lot of material on YouTube just around on, firstly, just unpacking how to go about certain things. So before you even come to me, before you even get to a person, because I realize that sometimes it's got to be, everyone must be asleep in the house. It's almost like you're doing something wrong. Correct. Because you don't want someone to see you vulnerable and seeking out help. So I would say that, in a male space, because the space isn't yet safe, or you don't feel safe within your space, find out what is out there and what some of the other men do, because there's a lot of content on guys who say I was being abused, or I don't know how to tell my family that I've lost my job, all of those things that sometimes are actually hard for men to step out. But also then when we were talking about quiet quitting and organizations and programs in place, I know that a lot of organizations have EAP, which is this employee assistance programs. Correct, yes. Which are like wallpaper. They're like wallpaper. No one goes to them. Right, but these are paid services. These are paid for services that are there, and I've encouraged in my immediate spaces and people. I say, go and find out every time, and people are like, oh my gosh, I see a psychologist. I've seen 8. So for sure, I'm always encouraging that. Go into your program, understand what they have, and then extend that. I mean, I've extended my program to my brothers and everyone because it's an issue that does impact me. Exactly. So when you're talking about how to make people feel valued, and part of the reward, it's in those services that assist employees to be their best selves.
Now let's talk about the cost that comes with wellness, right? There's emotional wellness, there's mental wellness, there's physical wellness, and all these 3 aspects, body, you mentioned earlier, you go to gym. So, if you don't go to gym, you can always exercise anyway. But for the mental one and the emotion, and if you end up seeing a therapist or a counseling, you have a counseling session. What are the average costs? Are we talking about? Because I'm thinking someone out there that you have just now convinced to say it's okay to go and talk to somebody. What's the price range?
So until recently, it was quite pricey to see a therapist because there was lots more drive to go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. But before I mention the prices of that, I think from talking to someone, there's always community leaders that you can engage. There's always the church. We really underestimate, but churches have lay ministers. They have counselors within the church space. Of course, they may not be equipped to go all the way with you, but at least as a start to say, I think there's something going on. I want to sense for sure when you say, I don't know, I'm having this thought, I'm having this feeling. let me sense check if it's anything more
or
not, or
yeah.
it's normal. It's based on where I am in life, because also based on where you are in life as you grow,
Correct.
you'll have different thoughts in terms of where you want to be. So I would say that you have the counselors, you have counselors which are probably can range around 500 rands, 300 rands. There's also even a South African Depression and Anxiety Group, which is where I started. I started as a telephone counselor when I was studying, and it's where it's a free number that you can dial, and there you get a telephone, you call, and it's a toll-free number, or you send an SMS and someone calls you back. 24 hours. They deal with suicide matters, substance abuse, and can help you identify the problem through just a conversation. There's grief that we deal with in that space as well. So that's SADC, based in Johannesburg, but they are national in terms of you being able to reach out to them.
Yeah.
And then you can, that's a free service. You also have helpline, which is also a service that you can call and have the same someone call you from the other side at the time when you are able to, because sometimes you call and then drop and you're like, I remember someone would call and be like, no, wrong number. Then they pick up again. So as you see, it's like just gaining the courage to just be able to say, make the call, I need help.
Yeah.
And then you can move into a physical space, which is then where you can see therapists and counselors similar to myself. And then even in that space, depending on what it is that you need, you will be looking at different prices, as I said already. Some will charge 300 because they are doing it in a center. Some will be 500 because there's a lot, maybe some more cost derived from that. And then they create a program for you. But then sometimes you do need a psychologist who will then be able to prescribe certain meds, because then it sometimes is a matter of biological as well, where you need then mood stabilizers and things like that in order to help you with a particular mental issue or matter that you may be going through. And then the psychiatry. Psychiatry is when now you are chemically have imbalances that need to be worked on through meds in terms of what you're going through. So that's where you'll have the likes of disorders known such as schizophrenia, bipolar, etc., that actually need to be regulated by medicine. So these are all the different offerings when it comes to mental health and how far it can go in terms of what you need. Psychiatrist, it does tend to be a higher bill. There does seem to be a gap or a need for us to grow in that space from until it's not so expensive. Right, because it is quite. And then there's also institutions, the likes of Ageso and others that I've seen around, where you can actually go into a center for a period of time to help you through medication, exercise, yoga, and a full holistic approach to you getting back to your whole self. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I guess there's a wider range depending on where you are in the process, and there's also free services.
And there's the government services as well. If most hospitals have
and I
wards.
think if you take advantage of those, it would definitely help. So one last question before I do let you go, because I could go on forever in this conversation. In your opinion, I mean, you are in the industry, you're a counselor, you've studied this thing. There's also quite a huge spike in people being diagnosed with anxiety.
Yeah.
Right? So, and obviously, if you don't, and people use the word depressed so loosely.
Yeah.
So I assume there's a distinct difference between the two, right?
Oh, there's a distinct difference, but there's also a very close interlink between the two.
Yeah.
So just to go back before I answer, I'm anxious. There's anxiety in life. There's a normal level of anxiety that one does, just because you touched on in the beginning, inflation, the financial strain that people have, load shedding, there's just quite a lot happening in the world that you maybe didn't have to deal with before. That you suddenly have to. So there's a level of anxiety that pushes you and motivates, which is just about, okay, this is all that's going on. What do I need to? Where do I need to? So that's healthy. Normal. So that's healthy and normal. And as with depression as well, there's a level of, I'm just sad and I just really don't feel like partaking in this. But then there's a sadness or a level of downness and a space where you cannot function in your normal self. You cannot be a mother. You cannot be in your holistic self. You cannot go to your job. You cannot function. So that's when then you have to, so you can't walk around just saying, I'm depressed, because you need to be diagnosed in terms of how long has it been, what are the symptoms, etc. So diagnosis isn't just because I'm sad. So that's also something we need to be careful about. But when it comes to the two being linked, anxiety can overwhelm you to a place where you quit and then just go into a space of regression and then be in a space of depression. So because there's just so much going on and you will not even partake in and be part of anything, and you move back. So that's where then the interlinks come in terms of being in the hype stages.
You're so anxious that you actually cripple yourself.
You become crippled and you can't actually function because you don't know where to start and you're overwhelmed. So that's when then you talk to someone or myself, where we'd be like, okay, Penny, what's going on? Then we look at what are all the levels of Penny, because you have a whole lot of different pillars and drawers of yourself. There's so much. So maybe the anxiety is coming from your workplace, or the anxiety is coming from the family, or the so it's just then we sit and actually see what are those, and then you build steps that can help you in that space so that you can come back into a balance of all of these other pennies that need to continue, because it does start to cripple everything else as a ripple effect. So if you're not happy at work, you're spending 8 hours there, you come into a household and you're supposed to switch on and leave it at the door, and then you're supposed to go into mommy mode where kids are just supposed to see you happy, and so it does actually play a ripple effect on everything else as well.
Phindi, thank you so much for coming. I think this conversation was really enlightening, and I really appreciate you spending time with us and talking to us on Hot Seat with Penzola. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Oh, guys, thank you so much for sitting through this conversation with me and Phindi, talking about wellness. I must say I'm feeling a lot lighter. I feel like I've just had a free therapy on the hot seat. And I think I walk away with one thing, which is, wellness is really a holistic concept when it comes to us as human beings. We need to look after our bodies, we need to look after our feelings, and we need to also look after our brain, because if any of these areas are not looked after, it does impact the rest of you. So really, really appreciate that. And guys, if you do need the help, contact details are on the screen for the free services, but if you can afford to obviously see a professional, please go ahead and do it. I honestly think that we underestimate the power of just looking after ourselves. So thank you very much. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. And if you do want to ask Phindi a question, please go ahead and drop a comment. I will actually ask her to answer all your questions. But yeah, it's been a real conversation, very, very empowering, and I feel light. And I think this is why we exist, to have these type of conversations. It's been real.
Felicia with the broken slate.
Hot Seat
with Penzola. Hot Seat with Penzola, scene 8, take 6. I need to hear that. You broke it. I'm joking.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Phindi. I think you
not when let's take that.
Okay, let's take
that. So Thank you, director.
Thank you, director. Okay.
3.
Speedy.
Sound. We'll have faith that sound is rolling.
Sound has been rolling.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Today,
pick up.
Okay.
Don't cut.
And she also runs a
No problem.
Okay.
Sure, the finance cut.
Let's cut.
Okay, cut.
Let's cut. Hi everyone, welcome back to Hot Seat with Penzola. Thank you so much for tuning in. If it is your first time on the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. But if you're returning,
no stress. Pick up. Don't cut.
Yeah, it's been real. Bye. Okay.
That's for bye-bye.
Okay, you can cut that part out. You can cut that part.
That's for bye-bye.
Let's leave it at it's been real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.